Okay. Yes. Okay. So, dog breeder. There's only really one thing in this problem that I think would trick all of you, right? It's that, okay, if they don't give a name, the name should be Steve, right? But if they don't give an age, the age should be 0, right? But what if they just give an age? Wouldn't the age be then the first parameter? So that means that name would not be undefined and it would be equal to something. But that thing isn't a name, it's not a string, it's a number. Right? So right off the bat, though, we know that if they don't give it a name and they don't give it an age, we know what they should be, right? So, like I showed you guys already, name should equal Steve. And age, should equal 0. Does everyone agree that this takes care of that scenario? If they don't pass in a name or an age, they will automatically be assigned to Steve and 0. If they don't pass in an age, but they do pass in a name, the name will be whatever that variable is that you passed in, and then the age will be 0. Right? Cool. So we can get this. Yeah.
How do you write that in the other version of the function, right? Dog breeder. Is that
Like this?
Yeah, those are its.
It would literally be. Right?
That works too.
Yeah, this is the same thing.
Same thing.
Oh, whoops. This is the same thing. The syntax, the ES6 syntax for this is just for the parameters of the function definition, right? The things that go in the parentheses. When you're writing the function definition, those are referred to as parameters, okay? Not arguments, parameters. The arguments are the things that you're actually passing in when you're calling the function. You call a function with these arguments, right? It's just some lingo. Cool. So, we've taken care of that case. But what if someone who's calling the function doesn't give a name, but they only give an age? If type of name is equal to number. That's all you have to do, right? That is how you check to see if all they're putting in is an age. Because we know that if they call dog breeder with like 10, that means name will be 10 and age will be 0. So then how do we reset these variables now? How do we reset these parameters, right? We open up our if block and we say age is now going to be equal to whatever name was. Because name was the number, right? Type of name is equal to number. We'll only get in this if block if we're only passing in an age. Does everyone agree? Right? So we could just reassign, like, okay, age was 0, but now we'll just reassign age to what name was, because that's actually the age we want. If we just pass in 10, name would be 10, and age would be 0. But if they just gave us an age, we don't want the age to be 0. So we just say age is now going to be equal to name. But since they didn't give us a name, they gave us a number, we could say name is equal to Steve. That takes care of that scenario right there. Done. Is anybody confused at what I'm doing here? Is anybody confused? Okay. So now we can just return an object where name is name and age is age. So if we say console.log dog breeder, and we'll pass in Jeff, and we'll pass in 100, we will get Jeff 100, an object Jeff 100. If we just pass in Jeff, we'll get Jeff and age is 0. If we pass in 21, we'll get name is Steege, age is 21. Yeah. Because this is a key, right? This name and this age are keys, right? So that means that they're strings. Because JavaScript says that all the keys in every object is always going to be a string. So they actually allow you to omit the quotation marks. You don't need to write them. You can just write whatever you want here, and that will be the literal key. You could think of it sort of as using dot notation, right? If you assign something like, if you try to add something to an object and you say dot name, it's literally going to be name, right? The same thing is true here. And now let me show you something else. You can actually do this, and you get the same thing. This is shorthand. This is saying that since name is going to be the key, but the value is going to be a variable called name, JavaScript will do this for you. It will split it and say name, name, age, age. Because they're the same word, you can do this too. This is like a little trick, right? So you don't have to write like, if you have an object of 5 things, and it's like name, name, age, age, this, that, whatever, whatever, you know? You can just write name, age, this, that, whatever, you know?
Those working parentheses values as well.
What do you mean?
It's like parentheses around. It should be.
No. Is anyone still confused by dog breed? Anybody at all? Cool. Done. Let's move on to the next one. Which was what? What was that one? Attendance check. Oh yeah, okay. Attendance check is annoying. Attendance check says, here's this giant thing. This is a classroom. What type of is classroom? Type of array? It's type of object. But it is an array. It's a trick question. Classroom is a list. It's an array of objects. Each of these objects in the array are indices, right? Index 0 is Marnie, the Marnie object. Index 1 is the Lena. Does anybody know anybody else that has a name that's spelled the same way as that? Would you like to tell me the pronunciation? Lena. And we have Shoshana, and Jessa, whatever, right? You can say that these are people because these are people's names, right? And that's the only key in this object. The only key, okay? And the value, it matches everything in every object. The value of those is going to be another array of objects. Each index in the array will represent a day of the work week, right? Monday through Friday. Each key will be the name of the day, and the value will be whether that person was there or not, right? Like their attendance. Cool. So, what do they want you to return? They want you to they want you to pass in. I mean, they're going to pass in. So I say const attendance check, right? and they're going to pass in a string or a day. Oh, whoops. They're going to pass in a day. You don't need the parentheses if there's only one parameter. If there's two parameters, you do need the parentheses, right? So if they were saying, I would have to wrap this if I was saying day and a person. Because if I omit this, there's an error, right? But I don't need the parentheses because there's just one parameter, just the day of the week. We want to know which people were there that day of the week, and in an array form. Okay? So how do we do that? How do we do that? So it looks like since we're returning array, we can say let students will be equal to an empty array. The reason I'm doing that automatically is because I'm thinking is that as I loop through this nested array of objects of arrays of objects, and I find out who is there on that day, I can just say push that student's name into this array and then return that array. And then I'm thinking if I never find anyone, I'll just return this array anyway because we know everyone was absent, right? Just thinking about the edge cases right now, right? So we know that classroom is an array, right? And what do we do with arrays if we want to check everything? We do a for loop. So we want to check every single element at each index in the classroom array. Have I lost anybody yet? Okay. So I usually don't like to say like let current person equal array of I. I usually just like saying array of I and like doing array of I of 0 or whatever. I usually like doing that. But in this specific case, I can see that there are so many nested things that I'm actually going to choose to pull out those current elements and make them names that make more sense to me, right? So what is at each index at the classroom array? What is a good word for this? Student, right? Like it could be a student. So we can say, oh, but I have students here. I could say present students. Then I could say let student equal to classroom at I. And we know that this student is going to be something like this, right? It's going to be this entire object. But we don't know exactly what that student's name is, right? So we could use a for-in loop to find the key, capture it in like a let key variable, right? But there's only one key. We know that there's one key. Each object has one student in it, right? So we could just do let student name equal to object dot keys, pass in the student, and then right off of that we can say 0. Who doesn't understand why this won't give me Jessup? We say object.keys, and at this point of time in the for loop, we're on Jessup, right? So we pass in this whole object, because that whole object is assigned to student, right? That's classroom at I at that point of time. So that will be student. So we do object.keys and pass in that student. What does object.keys passing in an object return us? It's an array of keys, right? And we know that each of these objects has only one key, the name. So I can automatically just do at 0, because that will be the first index in the array, the 0th index in the array, the first element, right? So this will be the name every time we're looping through, okay? Okay. So now we can pull out another thing and set it equal to another variable. And this will be let days of weeks. Week. Days of week. Okay. And that will be equal to student. That will be equal to student at student name. Why? Who's confused by that? Why is this equal to days of the week? Because what is student? What is student here? It's Jessup. Student is this entire object. Not like Jessup, like the actual key. Student is this whole thing. So student at student name. What is student name? That is the string Jessup. So student at student name will give us this array of days of the week. Right? And it's another array. So now we can do just another for loop. Not I, j equal to 0. J is less than days of the days of week dot length j plus plus. Right? Let me indent a little bit. We'll make new lines. Okay. So now I'm going to loop through this array, right? And each index will be a different object. So we can say let current day equal to days of week at I. Right? Because since we're looping through this array, I is 0, it will be the Monday object. I is 1, it will be the Tuesday object. So on and so forth until we're done looping through this array. Right? Is anybody confused yet? It's okay. It's okay to be confused because you kind of have to like follow along with the whole flow of things to really get why we actually are in this array now, right? What's up?
So student at student name is the days of the week. Why does it give you the values?
Wait, say that again?
Student, the days of the week.
Days of the week is student at student name.
Yeah. So
That's the value of Jessup, which is an entire array. It's one array.
But it's not returning the values of that object.
What object?
The one that is the week, Jessup object.
Jessup is not equal to an object. Jessup is equal to an array. It's an array of 5 objects inside of it, but we don't know that yet. We have to loop through the array first so we can access each object. Right? So like days of the week is this, right? Days of week at 0 is this whole object. That's that whole object. That's why I take it out and say we got the current day. Days of week at I. Right? So now we can even pull this out even further and we could say let day name equal to the same thing as before. How we got the name up here. Object.keys of current day. No. Yeah, current day. This is so confusing. At 0. Because current day is going to be this one if I was 0 when we're looping through this array, right? So if we pass in this object, we know that there's one thing inside of it, right? So if we do object.keys, throw this Monday :false, right, into that, we will just get an array with one element. And at the 0th thing will be Monday. We finally got a day of a student. Isn't that something? What's up? Yeah, my bad. That would have been really annoying to debug later. Okay. So, that's why I'm saying, like, don't get into all these, like, habits of just using I everywhere, you know? Starting for loops at 0 and just looping to the end. Like, sometimes you gotta change it up, you know? Gotta really think before you start typing sometimes. But sometimes don't think, you just type, you know? What's up? This?
Yeah.
Same reason here. I know that it's 0. I know that it's that, because what is object.keys of an object? Like you pass in an object, right? Like when you call keys of a global object, you have to give it an object. What does it return? It returns an array, right? Object.keys returns an array. When you call it, you pass in an object. And it returns an array of all the keys. And I know for a fact that there's only one key. I know that. So I can just do 0. Because if there's only one key, that means it's going to return an array with one thing inside of it. So that means that it will always be that array at 0. But the only thing we're passing in here, the only current day, is just going to be this. At that point in time. As we cycle through the inner for loop, we're going to hit each of these. Each of these. Each of these. Because what do we have to do? We have to check that this is the same as the day that they're passing into the function. That's the whole point of looping through down and down and down to find out what day is being passed into the function. Right? Cool. So now we have the day name, and we can just do if day name is equal to day. Why can I say day here? Because of scope. This if block will look up, look inside of itself. There's no day, right? No day. No day. But then, there is a day. And it's the thing we're passing in the first place. So I still have access to that day. And since I have the current day name, right? The current day, the day name, if that is equal to day, but that's not all we're checking, right? We have to know if the current object that we passed into object.keys is the day, but we only want to do something if its value is true, if they were present, right? So if we want to do 2 checks in one if statement, and. That will be current day of day name. You could say equal to true, right? Right? But can I also do this? Oh, Can't I also do this? Because current day at day name will either give us true or false. So if it's false, this is just false. This if block won't run. Because with an and, both things on each side have to be truthy. So if it's false, this just won't run. Because that's a false is false, right? If it's true, though, and this is true, what do? we say present students dot push what? Student name. And I just had to look up here and I saw that I named something very smartly. So that's the student name, right? And that is the solution. As soon as you return present students there. Nope. There. Sorry. I had to scroll down. You guys got to stop returning things inside of for loops. I see everyone do it, and it's always a problem. Usually, okay. Not like returning in for loops, but doing if-else statements where both the if and the else are returning something in a for loop. That's the same thing as just not looping. You know, you just will never loop, right? Yeah.
On left 68, where it says current day and then bracket day name.
Yeah.
If you do dot day name, should it still work?
No, because day name is a variable, right? We're not actually looking for a key that says day name. We're looking, day name contains either a string Monday or a string Tuesday or a string Wednesday, whatever, right? So any object dot whatever you write will look for that literal sentence that you wrote. It'll look for a key that is called day name. So it'll just be undefined every time. Make sense? So that's why we use bracket notation there. Any question? This is a confusing problem because you have to loop through a lot of things. You have to dive deep down, and it's arrays and objects in one, okay? I have to do this like every day I work. Straight up. Like, because some things just make more sense to store in arrays, some things make more sense to store in objects, and then when you make a call to the back end and you're receiving one response with a lot of things, okay? So this is important. This is an important concept to grasp, but it's okay if it's confusing because it kind of is, right? But you see how now pulling out these things and naming them something else actually helps, right? Right? Any other questions before I start the topic of the day? The last topic I'll ever teach you. It's in. Any other questions? I think the best way to solving this problem is going very slowly and not trying to do it all in your head. And put commas, right? Like if I was solving this right off the bat, I mean, this is clear. I would say student object, right? Not spelled like that. This would be student object key, right? And so on and so forth. This would be student object value, and then I would write array of objects, right? And so on and so forth. I keep spelling this wrong, Jesus. I'll just finish. Current day would be current object with one value. Key of object, day of week. I can't do that. God damn it. Check if current day is equal to day passed to function. And if that value there is true. Push into outermost variable. Return. Oh, whoops. Return. Okay. That's for you guys for later. Shit. God damn it. 1 second. All right. Object methods. You guys have been using methods the entire time you've been here. The entire time. Okay? Let hobbits equal Frodo Sam, right? Console.log hobbits dot index of Frodo. You get the 0th index. You pass in Sam, you get 1. Index of is a method. It's an array method. Okay? Okay? Whoops. So, I'm going to show you quickly, before we go into the slides, because there isn't that much to kind of go over. Actually, no, there is a lot to go over. Never mind. So, I will show you how to make your own custom method, right? Because index of dot push, shift, there's other ones, right? 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, whatever, dot reverse, concat, whatever. Those are all built-in methods that JavaScript provides for you, right? You don't have to worry about how they work, but they'll just work. Well, okay. You don't have to worry. You have to worry about how they work. You don't have to worry about like what's happening under the hood too hard, right? But they do something, and JavaScript just provides them for you, and they're accessible all the time. But sometimes you need more than just the things that JavaScript provides for you. Sometimes you have to do very specific and custom things, right? So let's say I have this fellowship object again, and it's going to be hobbits will be Frodo, Sam, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. And then I'll have elves, and I'll have Legolas, and I'll have dwarves, and I'll have Gimli, and then I'll have wizards, and then I'll have Gandalf, and then I'll have men, and I'll have Aragorn, and Boromir. Oops. So here's an object of the fellowship, right? Cool. Like it has a bunch of keys, every value is an array. Right? Cool. So let's say I wanted to call out a specific class. I wanted to write a function that called out like everything in here individually of a specific key, right? I can write a function out here, but I can also write a function in here, and that will be a method. A method is a function inside of an object, and the function's name will be the key. So, I could say call out members. That will be the name of our function. And it will literally be a function, and it will take in a species. Okay? So what I'm doing with this function is that I'm going to pass into it hobbits or dwarves or elves or wizards, whatever, and it should console log everything in that specific array over there, right? So I would just say for let I equal 0, I plus plus, nope, I is less than what? Fellowship at species dot length I plus plus. Then I will say console.log fellowship at species at I. Does everyone agree that this for loop will loop until the fellowship at whatever I'm passing in, and we know that everything is an array, right? We know everything is an array. Then we could say console log fellowship at that species, so that will be an array at I. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, right? How do we call this? How do you call dot push? How do you call anything? Dot, right? Dot. Fellowship dot call out members. Pass in hobbits. You get, there's another console log up here. You get Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin. You pass in dwarves, you get Gimli, because there's only one thing in that array. Pass in men, you get Aragorn and Boromir. You pass in man, and you get a type error, because I'm not doing a check that the thing exists or is an array. Whatever. I'm lazy. This is a lazy function. I'm not checking anything. But does everyone understand how this function is actually calling out all of those names? And you can do this customly. You can make however many methods in one object as you want. Yeah,
It's probably a stupid question.
there are no stupid questions.
Good.
Unless they're stupid. What's up?
Well, let's see. So how does it know that species is the name of the species? How does
What do
it,
you mean?
like you're saying fellowship species, but how does it know that hobbits and elves and dwarves and wizards and men are all species?
So the method is relying on the fact that I, as a person, know what all the species are in the fellowship.
So if you put species there, it's just like that's what we're calling all these species.
Exactly, because you can name function parameters anything you want, right? I can name that gobbledygook, and then I have to refer to it as gobbledygook everywhere. But if I pass in hobbits, that variable gobbledygook will be hobbits, right? And since that variable will change every time because I can pass in whatever I want, I say fellowship bracket species. That will return an array, and that has a dot length property. And because that's the thing I want to loop through, that's the thing I put in the for loop declaration, definition. Then I could just console log that same thing, but instead of dot length, I just say at I. Yeah.
So is line 89 where you're naming the species?
In line 89 is the beginning of the function definition. Instead of saying const call out members equals whatever, right? A function, I'm putting it in this object. And it lives here. And its name is call out members. But call out members is just still an object key, right? So it's still a string. Its value, though, is the actual function. So what would happen if I did this? What would happen? call out members is not defined. Why is that happening? Yeah, I guess it's a scope thing. It's more like a call out members actually doesn't exist anywhere. It's a key in an object, right? It's a key in an object. Like these are all keys, right? This is key hobbits. It's an array, right? Right? The value's an array. The key is hobbits. Can I just say console.log hobbits? Nope. Can I do that? No. Hobbits doesn't exist in here. It only exists in the object. It's not a scope thing. It's like this is nowhere, it's just a key in the object. It's just in the object. It's nowhere else. And the same thing is true with this method, call out members. Call out members will return the same thing because all it is a key in the object. It's not anything else. But what we really want is its value. So if we say console.log fellowship dot call out members, then we would get function call out members. Because that is what its value is. When you say object dot a key, what that is a value, right? What you will get in the console will be a value. If I did fellowship.men, I would get an array, right? This is the same thing. It's just that the value this time is members. Members is a function. And yeah, you can do it like that, but you can also say fellowship dot call out members equals this. Yeah. Oh no, I don't have the console log. Fellowship dot call out members of wizard. And it's the same thing. It works the same way. Because remember how you add things to an object, you can also add methods that way. And this is very powerful. This is a powerful tool that you can store functions in objects and call them whenever you want off the object. Yeah.
So since you called it, will it now be in the object if you
Yes. So if you console.log fellowship, you get call out members as a function. So let's write a function that won't call out the members, but it will kill off the members. And this is going to pass in an actual name of a character, right? So how can we do this? How can we get rid of one of these names depending on what we pass in? Actually, you know, we'll say a species and a name to make our lives easier. No, we'll just do it. Yeah, we got time. No, we'll just do it a name. Just the name of a character. So we can say for let key in fellowship. If fellowship at key dot includes, right, name, we can say fellowship. Well, this is kind of redundant. No, this is fine. If fellowship at key dot includes name, fellowship at key is now going to be equal to fellowship at key. Here's another method that I've never showed you. Dot filter name, and then we will say name. I already have a name. Current name. We will say current name. We want to keep it. It's not equal to. Then we can just return. So I'll make this a little. So if we do fellowship dot kill off members, I'll make this member since it's a singular member, and we pass in, take a wild guess, Boromir, and then we console dot log fellowship. Boromir is gone. Let me just walk through quickly what the functions actually do, right? So, I know that filter is something that you don't know yet, so I'll just explain it quickly. Filter is super useful, okay? So, I'm saying in this function, in this method, kill off member, kill off the member. It's like kill off member. It sounds better. Kill off member. Okay. And as you can see, kill off member is now inside of the object fellowship. So, kill off member takes a name. That's the member we want to die, right? So, we loop through the fellowship object because we have to find the name, because the name is inside of all of the keys in an array. So we loop through that object, right? You can see the object here. And all of the object's keys will be stored in this variable, let key. So to get the value, to get the actual array at each point, we do fellowship at key. And to see if that name that we're passing in is in that array, we can do fellowship at key dot includes name, because that will return a Boolean if that name is in that array or not. Is everyone with me so far? That makes sense, right? We find the array in that object, and we check to see if the name is in there using the dot includes method. So, now, if we did find it, if it's in there, we're going to say fellowship at key. That array, we're going to reassign its value. And it's going to be fellowship at key, that array dot filter. Dot filter returns a copy of the array. Like slice, it returns the copy of the array. And like the name sounds, it actually filters out whatever it is that you pass into it. Okay? But it doesn't take a value. It takes a function as an argument. And you guys will learn about this next week. Higher order functions. Okay? Filter takes a function. And that function that I'm passing in, this is the function I'm passing in, right there. That's the function, okay? It takes a parameter, current name, and this dot filter says, will automatically be assigned to every single element in this array. It kind of dot filter loops through the array for you. And at each point, it will assign that current element to this variable current name. Then we say return current name is not equal to name. It might sound a little backwards, but basically, if this statement is true, whatever the function that you pass into filter, whatever it is that is returned true will be kept in the array. Whatever returns false will be filtered out of the array. Okay? So we want this statement to be true if the current name is not equal to the name that we want to kill. If that's true, that person will stay into this. Otherwise, it's filtered out. And it returns a new array. So we assign fellowship at key that new array. And that's how we get it out. So if we pass in Gandalf, he sort of dies, but not really. Wizards is no more. Gandalf technically dies, but he's reborn. Yeah.
Add in the return current name. Won't that just say the names in the middle? Say it's Sam. Won't
Yeah.
it stop at Sam? Take him out and not.
Here?
So yeah, won't that return stop it?
No. No. Okay. So the function is called on every element. It's not looping inside of this function. This function is called on every element. So current name will be each name in the array. And at each point in the array, we have to return something. True or false. That's what filter says. Filter says you have to return true or false. If you return false, it's deleted from the array. If it returns true, it's kept. Filter might be a little too confusing for some of you right now to wrap your head around how you're passing a function into a method. That's weird, right? It's okay though. Look filter up on MDN this weekend. It's super useful. And try and use it, try and practice with it and rep it. Before I go into the slides, it's okay that if you're confused on filter. The main purpose here is that I am saying these two things are now going to be keys in the fellowship object, but since their values are functions, those will be methods, and we can call those methods like this. Oh yeah, and the reason why I'm returning here after I finish filtering out, right? It's because I don't want to loop through the rest of the fellowship to save some time. I just return the function. Because, oh my god. Because if this is true, we're just killing off one member, and we find that member here, right? We find that member in the if statement. If fellowship of key dot includes the name. If we found that person, we're going to delete them. And then we don't have to look any further. We don't have to look at any other key value pairs. We don't have to look through any other arrays. We can just return the function. If you write return, you don't have to return a value. You can just write return. It's going to return undefined, but it doesn't matter because this method isn't supposed to be returning a value. It's just supposed to be modifying an object. Now, I'm going to do something else in this function. I'm going to change things around. What if we didn't know what the name of the object was? Right? I'm saying fellowship at key, right? What if we didn't know what the name of the object was that we wanted to loop through and check and stuff? What? Key in this. What? Maybe I messed something up. I'll explain that in a second. Yo, this was wrong. What the hell? Huh. Sorry. Cool. Okay, so let me go back. Change this to function. This takes the name. Cool. All right. Sorry about that. I'll explain my error in a second. So, now I will give you a little introductory to the keyword this. This is super complex. As you can see, I just struggled with it. So it's okay to be confused by this. This is not required for you guys to know for the entrance exam to full stack, okay? But you will be working with this a lot in full stack. So that's why they want to introduce it briefly to you during bootcamp prep, okay? When this, there's a lot more to this one than what I'm going to tell you right now. But the this keyword is actually referring to the object that it's inside of, right? When it's used in an object's method. Fellowship.killoffMember equals a function, right? So that means that killoffMember will be a method inside of fellowship, right? Right? Say yes if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay. So that means that this keyword is referencing the fellowship object. If I say, let me just console that out. If I say console.log, this is triple equals to fellowship, you get true. It is the same object. The same object. Not a copy, not a, hey, look at this picture of this object. It is the object. This is referencing the exact object. Does that make sense? If I say this in a method, I'm saying the current object I'm inside of. Okay? So I say, let key in this. That's the same thing as saying let key in fellowship, because this is referencing the object that's inside it. Is anyone confused by that? And this is true when you write this, when you define an object's method. When you're writing an object's method. This keyword will be referring to the object inside of its method, inside of the function, because methods are functions, right? Right? Is Anyone confused by that?
Is this subject to scope at all? Like this, you said this in the for loop is equal to fellowship.
This will be equal to fellowship everywhere in the function. It does not reference anything else. It references the object that the function is inside of. Okay? So, let me tell you about the error that I just got. And this is just like, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, I forget. Sorry. This is the main, not gotcha. It's the main difference between defining functions with the function keyword and defining functions with a fat arrow. When you define a function with the fat arrow, it passes down the reference of this where the function was defined. Okay? If I don't do this, if I don't console log this, and I console log this out here, this refers. Oh, I didn't write anything. This is referring to the window object. Okay? There is something called the global object. Okay? So when I define this method with a fat arrow, where am I defining that function? Where am I typing that code? In the global scope. And since I used a fat arrow, the this reference was passed down from where it was defined. So inside the function, this was referencing that giant object, that giant scary object. And that had absolutely nothing to do with fellowship. Nothing. Okay? And that's why I was getting that error. I was saying this at key dot includes. There is this at key, I would have no idea what that is. Okay? That is the main difference with this and that's the main difference between defining functions with a function keyword and the fat. It's more with this keyword. Yeah. Passes down the reference. Yeah.
So what's the benefit of using
It's not const. Well, it's the fat arrow specifically. Because you can say const function const kill off member equals function keyword. And then it won't be the same thing. Well, no.
Well, I mean,
Well, no, because then you can't use the this because you're saying this variable. Then
that just uses the function all the time.
well, you'll see a use for that later. Because sometimes the reference of this gets lost. Sometimes you want to, JavaScript is an object-oriented language, like Java, right? So basically, when you're making web applications, everything is going to be an object, okay? And then to write functions in those giant objects you have, those will be methods. But sometimes you are going to want the keyword this to be referring to something other than what you sometimes you want this keyword to be referring to an outer object when really it's referring to an inner object, or vice versa. Okay, so sometimes fat arrows will guarantee you that this will always be referred to as the bigger component, the bigger object. Okay, because that's what you would need in certain situations that you would see later. But in this situation, I'm just regularly defining a object with a method in rep, right? So we don't want the global object, okay? We don't want that. So we wouldn't use a fat arrow in this situation. When you're working with this keyword now, define functions with the function keyword, and you will probably not run into really bad errors. And if you do, but if you're brave and you want to use the fat arrow, and you're running into an error, and you think it has something to do with this, just console log this inside of your method. Like, I'm not even going to do anything else. Oh, wait, no, I have to call this. Kill off member returns nothing, right? And I'm not console logging anything except this, which is the actual object. You can always console log to debug, right? So if you lose track of what this is, just console log this, and it will literally show you. Okay? Because this is referencing the object that the method is inside of. Okay? Yeah.
The scope of this changes because of the flat arrow.
Yes. The scope gets passed. The reference gets passed down from where the function was written.
Question. So if the function is written in the actual object, then it doesn't matter.
No, because I'm pretty sure the object is defined in the global scope. If I said, so let me comment all of this out. If I said test is going to be equal to this, right? And then I'll say fellowship dot this. Dot test. So we will get the global object. But if I said test is equal to an object with test2, and then I use this as a fat arrow, and I say console.log this, I think this will be different. Oh, .test.test2. Nope, never mind. I was wrong. But if I use the function keyword, then you get the thing that you expect this to be. A reference to the object that the method is inside of. Just don't use the this keyword with fat arrows, honestly. This is confusing, okay? But it does change. There is a danger there because sometimes it will be what you expect it to be. And I want you guys to be aware of that, okay? Is that cool? And once again, this is not necessary for you guys to really know that much about to get into full stack. I think you learn more about this during Foundations. You've got questions? Anything before I go into the slides? The last slides I'll ever give you. Any questions? Cool. So, object methods. So in these slides, we'll talk about what a method is, creating, accessing, and running a method, and a little introduction to this. Methods are actions you can perform on a value, okay? We've been using methods throughout this course, like .indexOf. These methods are built into JavaScript, and we don't have to define them ourselves. We have an array of countries, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile. Countries.index of Brazil is 2. 0, 1, 2. This is easy stuff, right? This is cake for you guys now, right? Cool. So how do we create a method? We can do that too. Consider this object. Let Grace Hopper. So Grace Hopper has a name key that's values Grace, a last key that's values Hopper, and a rank key that is Rear Admiral. Objects can hold any type of value, including functions. If we add a function to this object, that function is now a method of the object. Right? So we will say, we will add another key to that, my method, and it will be equal to a function that says console.log, I'm from a method. We can call our methods the same way we call built-in methods, right? Array.push, array.shift, string.toUppercase, GraceHopper.myMethod, invoke, parentheses, open close parentheses, right? And then we get in the console, I'm from a method. Does this make sense? Objects are like arrays. They can hold anything as a value, including functions. Those functions are methods. We call them like that. Dot method invoke. Cool? Nice. Methods on an object generally should, this is like a best practice thing, right? They generally should perform an action that's relevant to the idea or concept represented by the object itself, right? So say, quote, function console.log, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to get permission. GraceHopper.say, quote. It wouldn't make sense if .say, quote, console logged a quote that wasn't from Grace Hopper, right? Like if we were in our code and we were like, oh, we console logged Grace Hopper and we saw that there was a key that was say quote. So we were like, cool, GraceHopper.say quote. It would be weird if it was just like, make America great again, right? That'd be really weird because Grace Hopper definitely didn't say that, you know? That's a quote from someone else. Say quote, it's easier to ask forgiveness. Okay, whatever. So now we have a get age, right? We have the same thing over here, and then we're adding another key, get age, and we see that its value is the function keyword first, so we know that we're adding another method, right? This method takes a parameter, year, and it's going to return year minus 1906. So console.log gracehopper.getAge, this was made in 2018. So in 2018, Grace Hopper would have been 112 years old. Does this make sense? And it makes sense that this is going to get the age of Grace Hopper, not getting the age of another person, right? And it would be, yeah, okay, cool. You guys get that? Cool. Let's give Grace a greet method. So we have the key greet, and its value is a function, and it takes in a name, and it's console.log hi. And then console.log is a string hi, and then the variable name, the parameter, and then another string that says I am Rear Admiral Hopper. So greet will work, but it's a bit redundant to type out Grace's rank and last name twice in the same object. So we could say gracehopper.greet Karen, and it says, hi Karen, I'm Grace Admiral Hopper, right? Methods frequently reference other properties in the same object. So this could work too. You can reference the same object that it's in using, by saying Grace Hopper, right? Like we're defining Grace Hopper here, let Grace Hopper, and in the method we're saying GraceHopper.rank, GraceHopper.last. So we get the same thing. Hi, Gabe. I am Rear Admiral Hopper. Because hi, name, would be whatever we pass in. So we have Gabe. I am. Grace Hopper.rank is Rear Admiral. Grace Hopper.last is Hopper. Is anybody confused by that? When we define an object, we can use that object's variable name in the methods we create inside of it. We can also use the this keyword, right? And that is where I will introduce you to this again. And I won't run into any errors this time. JavaScript has a keyword this, and you can use that to reference the object in a method. The greet function here is the same as before, the slide before, right? It says, hi, Kate, I'm Rear Admiral Hopper. But I'm not saying GraceHopper.rank, GraceHopper.last. I'm saying this.rank, this.last. And that kind of makes sense in English, right? If I say this.rank, this.last, this.rank, this.rank. I'm inside of this.rank, rank, last. It's the same object. Who's got questions? Yeah. Because the greet method is inside of the Grace Hopper object. So you can use that to reference the object in a method, to reference the object that the method is in. If there was like another object up here with the same exact keys, first, last, rank, but it was called like Marco, and it was like Marco, Lisanek, rank is none, then this.rank, this.last wouldn't be that object, right? And that kind of makes sense like in English, right? How could this be that? How could this be anything else? No, it's this, the thing it's inside of it. Make sense? That's pretty much all I want to give you as an intro, okay, to this. Because this gets like super complex. I personally don't know everything there is to know about the this keyword. There's a lot to it, but it's very powerful, and you will see that later on, okay? Otherwise, it's kind of like if you console log this here, you would get the Grace Hopper object, like I showed you with the fellowship example, right? This is literally just another reference to the Grace Hopper object. So here, get this is now the key, and its value is a function. So get this is the method. And all that this method is doing is returning this. So I say let returned object equal Grace Hopper dot get this invoked. So what will this return? The returned object will be the Grace Hopper object. So if you console log returned object dot first, what would we get? And if we console log returned object triple equals Grace Hopper, what do we get? Yes. Because this, it's kind of returning the entire object that's inside of it. It's returning itself. That like makes sense, right? Anything? Cool. All right, so let's run through in a quick example for a calculator, right? So here we have let calc equal to an object, okay? Num1 is a key, and it's 20. Num2 is another key, and its value is 30. Makes sense, right? Then we have two other things, sum and difference. These are methods, they're functions. The sum function returns this dot num1 plus this dot num2. And difference returns this dot num1 minus this dot num2. When we console.log calc.sum, invoke it, what are we going to get? What are we going to get? So
That's 50.
exactly, guys. 20 plus 30 is 50. But what will we get here? Calc.difference. Yes, 50 and 5. Because before we call calc.difference, we reassign num2, calc.num2, we're reassigning that 30 to be 15. So that's why 20 minus 15, that's why we get the 5. Any questions on that? Simple calculator. Disclaimer, there is so much more to this. JavaScript is an object-oriented language, which means objects are their methods, and their methods play a key role in most production JS code bases. This is true, okay? We're only skimming the surface of this and object methods in this course. Lots more to learn as you progress. So a recap is what is a method, creating, accessing, running a method, and introduction to this. Any questions? Any final questions? Or you guys take a 5-minute break. Cool. Take 5 minutes and then I'll slack out Paris for the last time. Will not roll.